Okay, so we're going to be installing a new MSATA expansion board onto this existing Raspberry Pi 4 that's running RISC OS from an SD card. And the idea behind this is that we're going to be dual booting both Linux and RISC OS on this Raspberry Pi 4. The expansion has been supplied via RISCOSBits and is their EDOS expansion system. On here is essentially a 256 MSATA card, which is split in two. One half of the partition has got Raspberry Pi software on it and runs their operating system, and the other is essentially a 128 gig FAT32 partition that's got the installation software to enable dual booting between RISC OS and Raspbian. So let's have a look at what we get for purchasing off RISCOSBits, their EDOS software. And essentially this is a new bottom to the argon case. There's the MSATA card, a USB 3 connector, which we need to dual connect, and also we've got some screws and some feet for that, and we've also got here a new connector that will connect the existing board in the Raspberry Pi argon case, the existing one, through to the MSATA expansion at the bottom, and that's just done through the USB 3 connectors. So first, what do we need to do? Well, we need to remove the SD card here, and then we need to undo 4 screws here, here, here and here. So let's do that. Let's see, this can be a little bit fiddly, so just take your time. And there's the case. So let's just remove the protection there, and then what we need to do is line up the case rather nicely so the USB 3 connectors align, and just put that gently down. Now we have got 4 new screws here, and we've also got 4 little rubber elements for the feet, but we'll use the existing screws because as far as I can tell there's no difference, and they fit in, they seem to fit in anyway. Now we've done the mistake here, so let's undo this again, because we've got an SD card, and as you can see the SD card has now got no way of being put in from the front. So you should really read these instructions first, but it's a good reminder and also gives us the ability to cover off that as part of this instruction to remind people that they need to put in that SD card before they take out anything else. or put anything else on, shall I say. There we go. So let's just put that on there. So I think there's a good point to say that essentially, because you've now lost the ability, it does mean it's a little bit more fiddly if you wish to update the SD card and take it out, or it goes faulty. You have to now replace, essentially take everything apart, whereas before on the previous case you didn't have to. But I don't think that's a great loss, considering that we've now will have the ability for a 256 gig MSATA drive. So let's put all these back. Now we can actually put the feet on, but I'm not going to at this stage. Just make sure that that's nice and tight. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And as you can see, we've now got a slightly higher argon case that the Pi 4 is in. And what we now need to do is connect the bottom, where the expansion board is, to the top. And as you can see, all we do is just install this rather nice and solid connector into the two USB 3 ports. So there we are. That now completes the hardware element, and in the next section what we'll do is go through installing the RISC OS software and then doing the dual boot into Linux. Okay, so we've now booted up the Raspberry Pi with the Argon MSATA hardware expansion on, and essentially, as you can see here, we've now got a new directory, a new drive, and essentially this is a FAT partition. So as I said earlier, when we were doing the hardware install, the MSATA is split up two partitions. One that's got the Raspberry Pi OS on in 128 gig partition, and the other half has got a FAT32 partition on, which has got the three elements of the software install that RISCOSBits supply. This is our SD card, so let's open that up, and essentially what we've got to do is install all these three. Now if we open up the loader merge first, then essentially what I've done, I've copied those across already, so let's just delete that so you can see. So in the loader merge, essentially you've now got some new loader files. Now as I purchased the SD card off RISCOSBits, if you go into the loader on the existing SD card, you can see that it's already pre-installed on my card anyway. But if you haven't, then essentially all you need to do is copy that and just run it. So just extract, there's a fair bit there, and then double click to run it. I'm not going to do that, as I've just said, because I've already got that, but that's what you'd normally have to do. So let's just delete those, stop any confusion. We've then got a merge boot set up, and if we just copy that to the RAM disk, all it does is adds the EDOS software into your boot sequence. So let's just do that. Let's install that. There's the agenda, and it adds all these files. So just click on merge and set, and that's now done. And the last one essentially is the Linux switch, which switches between Linux and RISCOS from the desktop. So you've got the ability to do a software install and switch. So let's just do that. I'll put this into apps. So that completes the actual software installation. So let's just reboot this. I'll just do that. Sorry. Okay, let's just restart. Here we go. Now starting up the desktop. As you can see, it doesn't appear at this stage to be any difference, so that's pretty good. I won't go into that. So if we click on there, that's our files. So this FAT32FS partition is also available through the Linux side, so you can swap files between the two. So let's see how we go into Linux. So let's double click on this. Okay, now it's telling us to proceed to leave RISCOS and load Linux, which we want to do. So we'll load that, and this is essentially going to reboot our Raspberry Pi, and hopefully we should get up the first reboot of the Linux screen. And here we go. So it's setting everything up, and there we go. We're now in Raspberry Pi OS, and rather helpfully you've got a file there to say that essentially that should open up. Yes, it does. The FAT32 partition that you can see on RISCOS, so you can share files between the two. One thing that is a little bit of an issue is that you can't really do any configuration or certain elements of configuration in Raspberry Pi OS. That's down to the fact that this is a slightly customized version of it, so it limits some of the elements that you're able to configure, but in all intents and purposes you've now got a dual boot Raspberry Pi that can do RISCOS and Linux. And essentially, to get back to RISCOS, you just shut down, shut that down, and we should then be able to boot up into Linux on the power reset. So let's just do that. Let's reboot our Raspberry Pi. And there we go, we're back into RISC OS. So, as you can see, it's a fairly painless exercise to upgrade to EDOS, providing you've got an ARCOMP 1 case. In this instance with the MSATA, RISCOSBits do other elements of hardware, software for Linux and RISC-OS. And I also should point out that RComp also do something fairly similar that's available for their Forte 2 setup, and that, if I remember rightly, is slightly different in that it's got a hardware switch that enables you to switch between the two rather than a software. And of course Elesar do a dual boot on the titanium system, which you can purchase off them, so you can go between Linux and RISC-OS on a titanium. So it's rather good to have 3 lots of offerings, and depending on what you've got, depending on your price point, and some elements around how you do the install and how you actually get in and out of Linux may be better. I'm not going to pass judgment. I'm just going through on the RISCOSBits element here, as that's the one that I purchased from my existing case, and as I said, there's 2 other companies that do offer alternatives, so by all means check them out, and you can make your own decision. But hopefully this just shows that it's fairly easy today to actually have a dual operating system RISC-OS setup, and it doesn't really break the bank. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the MUG Virtual Midsummer Show 2022. Thank you.